wander out of town for a little while, and when they come back, years have passed, and the city has turned into a giant spiral. Underneath the city, there's this ancient, bizarre city of spirals. And the main two characters, once they reach the bottom, end up twirling together into a spiral frozen in time. Everything ends up stopped until it'll eventually start up again. It's a story of, you could say, the futility of change. Presumably this will keep happening over and over again. At some point there'll be another city built here, and it'll happen, and then so on and so forth. Kaoru Kurimoto. She is probably best known for a series of novels called Wing Saga. It was very long running, and it was not actually finished when she died. She died of pancreatic cancer in 2009. She was in her 50s. She was heavily influenced by Lovecraft. She was also very multi-talented. She was in a jazz group. She was an accomplished pianist. She was a music critic. She also pioneered Shonen Ai, which a lot of people I've met would thank her for that if they could. Makai Suikoden, which is a reimagining of the Chinese legend of the water margin. If you're familiar with the Suikoden video game series, those are also based on the water margin, which is one of the 5 Chinese classics. This version of it imagines that the Shinto gods are in a war with the elder gods from Lovecraft's mythos. It's a very long-running series. It's not been published in English. Other than Queen Saga, I don't believe any of hers have ever been published in English. Makio Yugati Tai. This is actually a story about a detective that basically says, oh, Queen Saga and my Cthulhu mythos stories are in the same reality. Though you could argue Queen Saga is very Conan the Barbarian in a lot of ways. So it's not as big of a jump. This, unfortunately, I was able to find very little information about this series. It took hours of digging just to find a few pictures. Chiaki J. Konaka, he's rather well known. He's both a tokusatsu and anime creator. He likes Western things. The J he chose, it's just because as John. He doesn't have a real middle name. It's uncommon in Japan to have middle names. He wanted one, so he chose John and started putting a J in between his first and last name. He's well known, probably best as the creator of Serial Experiments Lane, which is vaguely Lovecraftian, but I didn't feel enough to really put it here. He likes to make a lot of Lovecraft references, cosmic horror, so on and so forth. Cyberspace, again, it would have been interesting to see how Lovecraft would have handled these kind of themes if he had been alive today, but you could argue that Konaka kind of does a good job of addressing that. Armitage III, the main character is actually named after the main character from the story The Dunwich Horror, Dr. Henry Armitage, who was the head librarian at Miskatonic University, which is Lovecraft's fictional university and his fictional town of Arkham, Massachusetts. That's probably the main reference. There are some other little things there. For instance, a character named Lavinia Watley, who's a very brief character, but is named after another character of the Dunwich Horror. She is a woman whose father summons Yog-Sothoth to impregnate her so he can produce some kind of horror. This is kind of perhaps surprising, but both Digimon Adventure 2 and Digimon Tamers have Lovecraftian references due to Chiaki. Digimon Adventure 2, Episode 13, is basically The Call of Cthulhu is the title. To your left is in the in-universe Digimoji is the phrase which is a pain in the ass to pronounce in its proper tongue, but translates to, in his house that dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. Then there's a sign over there that bears the name of the town of Innsmouth from the story The Shadow over Innsmouth. And then here we go with Dagomon. It comes from the world of darkness and is worshipped by, and it's a horrible creature, and it wants to mate with it and its followers want to mate with the character of Hikari. That would not have flown on Fox Kids, of course. But as you can see, there's Hangyoman and Scubamon, these as Innsmouth deals with the deep ones, these aquatic race. There's this seaside town that's like gone to hell, and it turns out the captain from this town 100-some years ago in the South Seas came across this tribe, and they were mating with this undersea race, so he killed the tribe, and now the people of Innsmouth are mating with these fish people. So you have these creepy crawly fish people walking around. In Digimon Tamers, the references get a little stronger. There's Hypnos as an organization that tries to keep Digimon in the digital world and not in this world. Hypnos, while is the Greek god of sleep, but in Lovecraft's mythos, there is what can arguably be called a sleep god called Hypnos. They have two computer systems, Yugoth and Shagai. Shagai is a alien planet, and Yugoth is the name of Pluto from an alien race called the Migo. It's one of their way stations across the cosmos. The big bad at the end of the series is a Lovecraftian creature called the D-Reaper. It's this horrid Digimon monster. It's basically a failsafe in case the digital world goes bad so it can erase things. But it gets brought into the real world and intends to basically erase reality. We have a professor over here who's from Lovecraft's Miskatonic University. The D-Reaper has several different forms, which they fuse with a girl named Jurika To, and you can see one of them kind of looks like her face. He confirmed that this creature is supposed to be a Lovecraftian monstrosity. He actually patterned it off of that. The Big O. The Big O, its main Lovecraftian element is that it's a city where nobody remembers very far into the past. Some people are seeking to understand what happened, but it's generally considered a bad idea to do so. And as the series culminates, it pretty much is proven that some things are better not known. So this seeking of forbidden knowledge is a very Lovecraftian theme. There's also Dagon, named after one of Lovecraft's gods, who is a giant robot, if you will. There are some divers in the episode briefly who are designed to look kind of like deep ones. Hellsing, it's a popular series dealing with the Hellsing organization, a British group that fights vampires and other monsters. The main character, Alucard, who is basically Dracula, is basically serving this organization. Eventually fight Nazis, because despite being allies during World War II, Japan in the past 30 years has liked using Nazis as villains. Alucard himself ends up being kind of Lovecraftian, as his powers are limited by inhibitors. At first he can only raise by one level, but as time goes on, he becomes something that's not at all like a vampire, and more like some kind of interdimensional alien monstrosity. This was Chiaki's attempt at a live-action Lovecraft adaptation, Innsmouth Okage, which is based on the Shadow over Innsmouth. Main character travels to Innsmouth. He encounters these Gill people. He escapes, and then he ends up finding out that he actually is descended from one of these, and the story ends with him turning into one and going back there. As you can see, there's that wacky fish guy peeking in the window. As the main character is pursued by a variety of the Innsmouth folk, some who are entirely human, some who are kind of fish-like or have the Innsmouth look, as their neighbors refer to it, or are entirely, rubber fish people in this case. Maribito. This is a novel and a film adaptation. The novel is actually somewhat hard to find. The film was released domestically. It's pretty fucked up. And then the main character is obsessed with fear after he sees a guy stab his own eye. So he carries a camera around with him wherever he goes to take pictures of things. He ends up going into this underground part of Tokyo where there are cities and mutants and monsters and all kinds of stuff, and a race called the Duros, which is a throwback to an individual's claims that there really is a subterranean race, but that's beyond the scope of this. There are ghosts down there. He finds this girl chained to a wall, who's the girl on the cover. He takes her home, he calls her F, and keeps trying to feed her. She's mute, she doesn't respond to him. Eventually, he inadvertently figures out she likes blood. So he cuts himself to feed her, and when that's not enough, he starts killing people and bringing them back for her to train. He starts being followed by various individuals, and he's confronted by one woman who's accusing him of killing his wife and treating his daughter like a pet. As the story goes on, reality starts to kind of unravel, and he ends up going back underground with F. It ends with her recording him freaking out as he's finally understood the fear he so wanted to. It's bizarre and disturbing. Inorabuchi, he is pretty fucked up. I have nothing but contempt for the deceitful thing men call happiness, and find myself with no choice but to push my characters who I pour my heart and soul out to create into the abyss of tragedy. Fate Zero, he is not the original creator, but he did do some writing on it. And the character of Castor was basically patterned off a Lovecraftian sorcerer, and even has a summon monster that looks like something out of a Lovecraft story. It's plant-like and has tentacles and suckers. Puella Magi Madoka Magica. This series was confirmed to be Lovecraftian in inspiration. It takes place in an uncaring cosmos where these girls are approached by this creature and offered a wish in exchange for fighting creatures called witches. The idea is that the universe is moving towards entropy. A system runs out of energy and starts to collapse, and thus, in order to keep it going, they have to keep killing these witch creatures. Unfortunately, magical girls eventually become witches themselves, and thus other magical girls have to kill them. And this is arguably the villain of the series, Kyubey. This is the creature who makes these deals with these magical girls. You know, he's not really concerned about them individually or even humanity. He is completely utilitarian. The universe has to keep existing. It has to keep making new stars. The system has to keep running. So this is a economical way to do it. You get something out of it. You get a wish, and then you fight and die. Orochi actually said that Kyubey is a Lovecraftian entity. That's what he was going for. He's cute looking, but you can argue him as the villain, really. Song of Saya. This was a comic, novel, and game Orochi did, which is, a lot of people call it the most fucked up game ever made. Yes. I've actually played through it. I don't know if it deserves that name, but it is pretty fucked up. The main character is in a horrible accident. His parents die. He's able to recover, but this is now how he sees the world. This is a room. There's tables and chairs. This is his whole world. And this is one of his friends, how he sees them. Their voices sound like an audio malfunction. Then he meets Saya. She's this cute girl who, is all into him. Really all into him. But Saya is not what she appears. Think of it, if you see the world like that, when you see something normal, what are you really looking at? She's this hideous monstrosity. This is the most we see of her actual form. Like Lovecraft, he wanted to keep it something of a mystery, that you anticipate it, not see it, and have to wonder. But the game As the main character, the hero route of the game is you're basically helping Saya, so you are killing people. The endings, there's one ending where he chooses to help her completely, and the entirety of humanity are turned into creatures like she is. That's the good ending. Because that's the end. That's the good ending, even though it's the worst one, because that's the one you're supposed to shoot for because you're trying to help her. Shin Megami Tensei. Now, Megaten is a series that borrows a lot from mythology, religion, so on and so forth, and obviously because of that borrows from Lovecraftian tradition. Few examples. There's Cthulhu, an old one. Though Cthulhu's kind of a little too normal squid-like. The creature on the top left, your top right, is Ibaqua, and for some reason Azathoth is at the bottom, even though Azathoth is supposed to be the supreme god. The Persona series actually went more into Lovecraft's mythos than the main Megaten, especially the Persona 2 duology. Two examples are Abiaki and Hastur. Hastur I mentioned already, pertaining to the King in Yellow and so forth. Biaki are aliens who serve Hastur. They're both personas in the game. Nyarlathotep, again, the Japanese really like him. These are 4 of his forms in the game. Now, rather than being the servant of the dark god, of the god Azathoth in Persona, Nyarlathotep is the dark side of the collective human unconscious. He is humanity's collective shadow, the part of us that we do not want to admit, do not want to accept about ourselves. And so he can appear in the form of another person just with yellow eyes, or he can appear as another individual completely and hide who he really is. He takes one rather interesting form. One of the most interesting plot aspects of Persona 2 is that rumors start becoming reality. So by people saying things and spreading rumors around, those rumors start to reshape the world. For instance, in the second part, a rumor is spread that a certain bar sells guns. After using a detective agency to spread this rumor, they go there and the place is actually selling guns. A rumor pops up that Hitler and his last battalion have been living in Antarctica since the end of the war, and now they're coming back and they have the Spear of Destiny. The crystal skulls from Mayan mythology are also an element in this story. It gets to a point where because of these rumors being spread and becoming real, all of reality is fucked up. And so you have to fight Hitler at one point, and as you can see, if you want, all the swastikas on the bottom of the floor. His persona is Nyarlathotep, which he actually is Nyarlathotep. For the the enhanced remake for PSP, because of various issues, and this wasn't a problem many years ago, they felt that Hitler was still kind of iffy, or more iffy than he had been, so they put shades and an overcoat on him. He's usually referred to as hipster Hitler, and they call him Fuhrer instead of Hitler. It's like, they know who he is, seriously. The weird thing that really whiz is that Persona 2 Innocent Sin that has Hitler, its PlayStation release, which are the two on the left are from, never was released domestically. This is a fan translation. We did get the PSP release, but by that time Hitler had moved to Seattle and become a hipster. I'm sure his vinyl collection is impressive. Just as we never got the PlayStation version of Innocent Sin, we did get the version of PlayStation version of Eternal Punishment, but with PSP, for reasons Atlas would not say, we did not get the remake of that, which is unfortunate because it has a side story that's completely Lovecraftian. As you can see, there's Cthulhu. Ultimately, the storyline deals with restoring the soul of a character who was not in the original version of the game, and it connects into the ending of the story called Through the Gates of the Silver Key, or beyond the Gates of the Silver Key. in which Randolph Carter, who is one of Lovecraft's main protagonists, who actually gets out of things without going insane, ends up in the body of an alien creature. In order to disguise himself, he wears a wax mask and a cloak, and he calls himself Swami Shankaraputta, which you can see him towards the bottom. Part of the story involves actually getting his soul back from Nyarlathotep so he can go back to his original body. I had mentioned the cats of Ulthar earlier. That right there is General Zula. He's a cat of Ulthar. He goes along with you on this quest. Persona 5. The character Futaba, her first persona is called Necronomicon. It looks like a UFO, a spacecraft with gargoyle on top and all kinds of archaic runes. When she first manifests it, tentacles reach down, wrap around her, and pull her up into it. She pilots it like a ship. So that's as really as Lovecraftian as Persona 5 got, which is kind of disappointing, but it was kind of an interesting thing. Fight Xer1. This, I don't know if it's still in print, but this was one of the first things I watched in the 90s because I was able to rent it from Blockbuster. It is a Yuri series about an alien race called the Cthulhu invades Earth, and they kill people and rip them apart and replace them and all kinds of creepy stuff. This robot Xer1 shows up, and she takes this girl to protect her, and she obviously wants to nail this girl. I wasn't fully sure what to make of it at the time because I was not used to cartoons with overt lesbian themes. It's kind of a mess. The animation is nice, but the story has a lot of plot holes, but it's Princess Resurrection. This is a series that borrows heavily from horror as a whole, but it has one in particular Lovecraftian element that was rather essential. That is not dead which can return alive, and with strange ends even death may die. This is a line from the Call of Cthulhu as well as one other story. It's referring to the Elder Gods. When the main character is killed trying to protect her, she resurrects him as something of a zombie, and this is the incantation she performs to rise him up as he's laying in the morgue. Dream Dimension Hunter Fandora. This is one of those random things from the 80s that was never released here and probably never will be. It was done by Go Nagai, who created like Devilman and Mazinger Z and so on and so forth. It's about a bounty hunter who travels through the dream dimension, which is basically Lovecraft's dreamlands. The main villain is called Yog-Sothoth, like the Lovecraftian god. It's very fan service, as Go Nagai is notorious for. He was actually, Japanese PTAs really would go after him in the 70s. He was like public enemy #1 for peddling filth to their children. Okay, Mystery of the Necronomicon. This is a hentai series that's filled with Lovecraft references, but there is no tentacle rape. You're expecting there to be tentacle rape, but there is not. The Necronomicon is mentioned, obviously, considering the title, as is Abdul El-Azad, the author of it. There's another Clark Ashton Smith. There's a mention of Miskatonic University. This character, Delapur. Delapur is the last name of the main character of the story, The Rats in the Walls. That's the character who, like Lovecraft, had a cat with that name I cannot repeat. Lovecraft felt that not only do I have to have a cat with an offensive name, I have to put him in a story. There's the villain, Herbert West, who's kind of like this character from Reanimator. And then there's a statue of Lovecraft outside his mansion. Every now and then we're treated to a scene of it in the storm. It's like they want to say basically, oh, here's Lovecraft. We're not going to say it's him, but here's that statue again. Now, the idea that Lovecraft is the person responsible for tentacle porn is something that some people will argue heavily. However, it really isn't that simple. The fact is that arguably the first thing that influenced was The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife. It is a woodcut of a diver. She is, an octopus is going down on her, and one of its children is, playing with other parts of her. In the story, it's a dream, but this is not rape. This woman likes this. But this is the oldest known instance of woman on tentacle action. There's also the factor is that penises, because of Japan's censorship laws, you cannot show a penis unless it's mosaicked out. It's like Japanese pornography. You can have a woman and a dog, and I'm not joking, but you cannot show a penis unless it's pixelated. So individuals started drawing tentacles because they didn't have to censor a tentacle. Demon Beast Invasion is the first considered the first tentacle porn. It's demons and so forth, so it probably was influenced by Lovecraft. I don't think Lovecraft would be happy to know that. He actually was married for a few years, but it didn't last long and they barely spent any time together. I would be surprised if the man never touched his wife. Tell me, does this look Lovecraftian to you? There's live action tentacle porn in Japan. If your life wasn't complete before, it is now. And some of this you can get domestically. Or you could at one point, I don't know about now. I guess in this video, she's inside the monster, and then after it's done violating her, she melts away. Because if anyone here can tell me what's arousing about that, please do, as I'm trying to understand it still.
It's moist.
I bet it is. Here are some distinctly Japanese things. You notice there's Cthulhu and there's some deep ones. Japan has really embraced Lovecraft in a lot of ways, perhaps even more so than the US. I don't know if it's the tentacles or not, but you can try and argue that. I guess I can't disprove it, but I think that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
I was going to say more and more recently, you have a character of H.P. Lovecraft from a series called Bungo Stray Dogs. He is literally, he's named after Lovecraft, but his special powers, he is literally something that might or might not be Cthulhu.
There are a lot of pictures online of Lovecraft morphing into some kind of tentacle monstrosity.
Yeah, you go ahead. So yeah, I was also going to mention that one which was released like platform software is also heavily inspired by.
What did you say?
Bloodborne.
Bloodborne?
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I have not looked into it though. I heard it was heavily Lovecraft influenced. So, any other questions? I thought about it, but a lot of this really was deciding how much of the fucked up hentai to include. Well, I don't know. There's not a lot of not fucked up hentai because honestly, the Japanese porn industry is so centered on rape that I think it's all 90% fucked up. So, but it really next year. Next year I will use Bible Black just for you. Just for you.
What about Gantz?
That could be used. I actually did not use quite a bit of material I had. I have I think 102 slides here, and I didn't want to overstuff it, but yeah, that's something that is definitely Lovecraftian.
There's someone way in the back.
Yeah, there's someone.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
Really quick question. So you guys were mentioning the question of why Japan is connected with Cthulhu, and I'm just wondering could it be a connection with the fishing industry and the fact that Cthulhu and a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft stories seem to center around water, and Japan Japan has a huge history of water being part of its culture.
That is very likely. Again, yes, you're correct. Japan has a very tight bond with its oceans. Seafood is such a staple in Japan that it would surprise me if Lovecraft hated seafood. That might be one of the that's at least one of the reasons why so many of his creatures were aquatic. He really hated cephalopods. So tentacles were these things that were kind of creepy, so it just kind of worked. So
If you were the Tsukiji fish market, you'd probably go insane.
I think I'd go insane. I like Lovecraft, do not like seafood, so.
Well, there was a company actually out of Chicago called Warboat Toys, and they had a Kickstarter to get these like Kenner-style action figures made, and
There was a deep one, a cultist, a professor, and one of Cthulhu's spawn. Then there was a giant Cthulhu figure.
yeah, they made it was like a 12-inch one, but they had a glow-in-the-dark normal color, and they also had a coloring book was one of the incentives too.
It looked like a late 70s, early 80s golden coloring book.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's, if you're in your 30s, you might know what that is. If you're not, I don't know if you, I don't know. Well, not a coloring book, I mean a golden coloring book. I don't.
They had activity pages, get the professor through the map, and all these. It was pretty funny. Their second Kickstarter was not so much Lovecraft, but it was Krampus. It was done like My Pet Monster, and it came so close to making it, but it never did. Really funny.
There it is, not that you haven't already seen it. Any other questions?
What's your favorite part of the Lovecraftian mythos?
I think I really like the Dreamland stuff, honestly. I think my favorite story is probably The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadaf. It's one of his novellas. It mentions Cthulhu. It's pretty much the character of Randolph Carter who kind of represented Lovecraft himself, dreams of this city, and he is able to move around the dreamland, so he goes looking for it. He encounters various creatures and characters along the way, characters from other stories. The villain of it is Nyarlathotep, who is my favorite Lovecraftian entity. And it actually has an ending where Randolph Carter actually escapes Nyarlathotep. It's the one instance of a Lovecraftian god, if you will, helping somebody, and there's a god called Nodens. The name is taken from a Celtic god, but Lovecraft's Nodens is almost kind of like a Poseidon, and he actually saves Randolph Carter